The Metro Division figures to be an absolute battle in 2025-2026. We've got hosts from all over the division to break down this division.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network's 2025 NHL season preview. Your team every day.
All right, welcome hockey fans, Locked On fans, to a very special Metro Division roundtable discussion here. Like we were just saying, we've got divisions representing several teams from across the Metro. We've got myself, Jon Chik with Locked On New York Rangers. I am joined by my good friends, Zach Martin from Locked On Canes, Dan Holmi from Locked On Caps, and Alex Wiederspiel from Locked On Devils. And definitely looking forward to talking to all you guys about what's going to go on this season in the Metro Division. And wanted to go ahead and start with the good things, the positive stuff, reasons for optimism for all of these teams. So wanted to go ahead and just kind of throw it out there to you guys. What do you think is the biggest reason for optimism, for your team this upcoming season? We can go ahead. Alex is new here. We'll let him kind of hit the ground running with Locked On Devils there.
Oh, I appreciate it, John. I think the biggest reason for optimism for the Devils is the depth is much better this year. I think if you look from top to bottom and you look at the way they played last year for Sheldon Keefe, a lot of their numbers, especially the per 60 numbers as a team, like they kind of built on the promise they showed that one year they made the playoffs under Lindy Ruff. They really built on the promise of what they could do defensively. I think most Ranger fans remember how they shut down the Rangers in the back half of that series, ultimately winning it in 7. That's kind of how they looked a lot of last season. And so there are some areas for concern, but if I'm a Devils fan going into the season, I'm awfully optimistic at the start of it, at least.
All right, sounds good. And Zach, same question to you, man. Reasons for optimism for the Canes, who have been knocking on the door, and this could be the year that they kick it down. What do you got for us?
Yeah, of course. I think when you look at the Carolina Hurricanes, you get your top 6, kind of scoring winger that you really need in Nikolaj Ehlers. That is a help. And then you look at the defense, you go younger and faster with now you got Alexander Nikishin in his first full season, see how that goes. And you also got Keandre Miller as well, that a lot of people think could have a potential Brady Shea 2.0 run that he saw when he went over from the Rangers to the Carolina Hurricanes. And now if you run in the tandem back of Anderson and Kochetkov, and if everyone stays healthy there, you could be in a good spot. So for the Carolina Hurricanes, they got younger, they got faster on the blue line, and they added some top 6 help to their scoring. And you're just looking at a team that, as of right now, looks like one of the favorites to win the Metro Division this season.
Absolutely. And Dan, speaking of winning the Metro Division, that's something that you know all about from this past year. The Capitals surprising, at least some of us, I think, with, finishing on top of the Metro this past season. But what are you thinking this year? Reasons for optimism, and can they repeat as division champions?
I think they can, and reasons to be optimistic. Well, let's take a look at it. Alex Ovechkin, who we know caught and passed Gretzky, was a big part in the Capitals' success last season, is entering into what could be his final season under contract. And then the Capitals are doing something different this year than we haven't seen them do in a long time, and that's leaning into the youth. I expect players like Ryan Leonard, who had back-to-back 30-goal seasons for Boston College, to help elevate this team. And you have other young talent that's vying for jobs. I'm talking Andrew Crystal, who absolutely torched it for Spokane. And, you just take a look at the players. There weren't a lot of players added. I'm going to be honest with you. They added Justin Sordiff. They added Declan Chisholm. So I guess what I would do is I would concentrate more on the great extensions that were made. You saw that in the form of Jacob Chikrin getting an extension. You saw that with other key players on the team that are going to be a part of the secret sauce of this team. But all things considered, I expect the Capitals to at least maintain or take a step forward. Again, a lot of this is going to ride on the youth of this team. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out.
Absolutely. And as for the Rangers, I think reasons for optimism, it's very easy to forget this. And granted, the team has changed quite a bit in the time between 2 seasons ago and now, but this team is just 2 years removed from winning the President's Trophy and being in the Eastern Conference Final and being 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup Final. And, a lot of the more important pieces from that team are still here. And then this offseason, and we'll get into this a little bit more when we talk about the big additions to all these teams, but you add Vladislav Gavrikov, one of the more coveted defensemen on the market. And I just get the feeling we're kind of in a situation where, as a Ranger fan, the truth kind of lies between the two extremes. Maybe they weren't quite as good as they were 2 years ago, but I don't think they were as bad as they were last year. And even in a season last year where everybody had a down season, everybody took a step back, and the vibes were pretty much off from opening night until the end of that sad, sorry season last year, they still ended up, in playoff contention. They were still at least in the mix. So I think, they're in a better spot. JT Miller's been named the captain now. I think that gives them kind of a new direction. And Mike Sullivan coming in. I think he's obviously a proven winner, and they're trying to catch lightning in a bottle the same way that the Penguins did with Sullivan when he first took the helm there. So certainly reasons for optimism in Rangerland as well. And we want to go ahead and move things forward. I'm going to share on screen, those of you watching on YouTube, a graphic that has the over and under for all four of these teams as far as their point totals for this upcoming season. And as you can see, if you're on audio, we'll talk you through it. The Hurricanes are set at over under 106.5 points this season. This is, of course, courtesy of FanDuel. And the Devils are at 100.5. The Rangers are at 95.5. The Capitals, too, are at 95.5. So what we can do now, we can go in the same order. We'll start with Alex from Locked On Devils. And Alex, the Devils set at 100.5 points there. Over or under, man? What are you thinking for the Devils this season? Are they going to eclipse that, or will they fall a little bit short?
It's a brutal line. It's not one that I would probably want to bet on if I could make the choice here, because that is about as close as I think it's going to get. I'm going to a slight under is where I would go with that. My chief concern is that if you look at Jack Hughes' injury history, he's going to miss time, even if he doesn't suffer a catastrophic shoulder injury again, which he's done, by the way, a couple of years in a row now. Even if he doesn't suffer a catastrophic shoulder injury, his playing style, his size, he's probably not going to give you a full 82 to begin with. That's number one. And while I certainly like the addition of Cody Glass, and it's one of the things that I'm going to talk about a little bit later, I think that gives them some depth down the middle. That's not a guy that you're going to feel comfortable with in extended stretches in the top six. So knowing about the injury history, knowing that there's some age down into that bottom six that I think will help you in the playoffs, but may not be as useful during the regular season, I'm leaning right now on under for these Devils, but I don't think it'll be by much. I think they're going to comfortably be in the playoffs, but I have a hard time picking them to go over that 100.5 mark.
Gotcha. And we'll take one more look here. We got to refresh everybody's memories. So we'll move along to Zach. And Zach, that's a big total for the Hurricanes, 106.5, currently favored to win the division, at least for FanDuel here. But, they have a heck of a team. So what do you think over or under this year for the Canes, 106.5?
Yeah, I kind of think it might be the over, honestly, because you look at the team last year, they did finish with 99 points. And, of course, if they rested a lot of guys for the last 9 games of the regular season. So if you win a couple more games there, you're over 100 points once again. So getting over 100 at least is definitely in the cards for the Hurricanes. I would say you're probably looking at maybe 109. It's probably maybe 110 could be the ceiling for this team. But if you're talking about 106.5, I can at least see them hitting 107 at the minimum and can be closer to 110. So I think with the fact of where the Hurricanes are at right now and just how deep this team is on the forwards and on the blue line, as long as they said, as everyone stays healthy and kind of just do what you can, and you see some guys take next steps in their careers this year. You look at Logan Stejkov and Jackson Blake; those guys are coming into their, different aspects of their seasons with the Canes. I hope Andrei Svechnikov carries his momentum from the playoffs over into the regular season. Of course, with the addition of Ehlers, along with putting him with Aho and Jarvis on the first line and on the first power play, I could see this team really taking off and putting themselves in a good spot to hit that over of 106.5 and maybe fight for a number 1 seed in the East and maybe even fighting for a President's Trophy if everything falls into place for them. So I see this team, hitting the over.
Sounds good. And Dan, your Capitals, my Rangers, both at 95.5 points for this upcoming season. What are you thinking? Do the Capitals eclipse that number, or do they fall short?
I'm going to take the over on that one. Last season, the Capitals finished with 111 points. Now, listen, I don't think that they will finish with that many points. But there were no major subtractions to this team that some people always talk about. Can the Capitals duplicate the success that they had last year? If you kind of want to widen the lens, take a 30,000-foot view of this team 2 seasons ago, they were the last team to qualify. Last season, they were the first. So I'm not going to write the team off. My projection for them is 103 points.
Sounds good. And as for the Rangers, I'm also going to take the over. We've got a group of optimists here, everybody going over. 95.5 points for the Rangers feels doable. Something that's working in their favor right now that I think could certainly come into play is this is a team that always seems to respond well when it gets a new head coach. And granted, again, the roster has changed at least a little bit, like every roster in the NHL has over the past couple of years. But, you're talking about a couple of seasons where they massively overachieved in the first year that they had a new head coach. And obviously they're going to have the same chance here to do the same thing with Sullivan. Before that, it was Peter Laviolette. Before that, it was Gerard Gallant. They always seem to get a little bit of a boost from that. And, Sullivan, again, he's a proven winner. I know things haven't gone well the last few years with Pittsburgh, but their prospect pool is pretty thin to say the least. And Sullivan comes in here. It's a fresh start for him as well. There's a good mix of veterans and young players that are coming along very nicely. And I'm going to go with the over. I got to be optimistic at this point in the season, and we'll see what happens. I don't know if all 4 of these teams are going to be over when it's all said and done, but we'll see how it all shakes out for sure. But we're going to keep everything rolling. In just a second, we're going to shift our attention to key offseason additions for each team. We touched on that a little bit in this first section here, but we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive in the next segment. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's very special Roundtable edition is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people cannot name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It is an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, so keeping everything rolling here on this very special Locked On Metro Division crossover edition here. And wanted to go ahead and kind of go around the room once again here and talk about the most important addition, 1 or 2 big additions for your team, whether that's by free agency or trade, or maybe even somebody getting his start in the NHL. And again, we can start with Alex. Alex, man, what's the big offseason move, the big pickup for the Devils that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think most would say Connor Brown, and I certainly agree that it adds potential scoring depth if he finds the player he was as he started to get healthier last season. Certainly not the guy he was immediately coming out of missing almost a year and a half of time skating. But Cody Glass, who they acquired at the trade deadline, I actually think is really retaining him is kind of the big thing. And I alluded to this before, that the Devils have 2 issues in my mind. The first is the center depth when Hughes is out. And the second issue is getting Dawson Mercer off of center and onto the wing. I think it's hard not to watch Mercer and think that there is a ton of offensive talent there. He has shown it in spurts. He has shown it in flashes, and he's shown it at times in the playoffs. I think the issue is when he's playing center. I think you guys know as well as anyone else, that's a lot more defensive responsibility on the ice, and I think that's been a problem for him, particularly in the 3C role, where Mercer has played when he's been called upon to be the center, because you're not going to take away minutes from Hughes and Hischier. So to me, that addition of Glass allows Mercer to potentially play up in the top 6, play with either Hughes or Hischier, and I think that's a much better fit depth-wise for the Devils. Really, I think that the puzzle pieces fit better that way. And so I'm going with Cody Glass as the best and potentially most important addition of the offseason, even though I'm cheating a little bit. It happened at the trade deadline last year.
All good. We'll move along to Zach. Zach, what do you got for us? Biggest pickup of the offseason for the Carolina Hurricanes?
Yeah, I mean, kind of already alluded to it a little bit, but you're looking at Nikolaj Ehlers, someone that, like I said, the Hurricanes really have needed for a while as that top 6 scoring winger. Almost a point per game guy last year when you look at what he's done. He played 69 games, had 64 points, and you look at a guy who's now getting the opportunity to be the guy that he's always wanted to be, because with the Jets, he was mainly, second line, second power play. Now he's top line, top power play unit, so he's going to get that bump from being 15:48 of average ice time to probably 17-18 minutes a night. So the Hurricanes are going to really lean on him to kind of lead the way for the most part, especially with that top line of Aho and Jarvis. So there's a lot of excitement there just to see what he can do. And as long as he stays healthy, I think that's going to be a big key for the Carolina Hurricanes. And it's a nice, good 6-year deal at 8.5. That's not bad for a guy that a lot of people are kind of looking at as probably one of the big free agents to get, especially after, Mitch Marner got signed and traded, the day before free agency. So Ehlers was that next guy. And then, talking about Keandre Miller, John, I know me and you talked about during the offseason after it was done with that trade, but you look at a guy who's probably one of the more physical guys on the Carolina Hurricanes, over 100 hits last year, 100 block shots, someone who's going to add a lot, speed to the defensive blue line, because he's very quick. Like, his feet are moving. He makes it almost seem seamless for what he can do. So I think you add his youth at 25, and you're going to, if you pair him with Jalen Chatfield, you're going to have two guys that are going to be very fast together and find a way to be offensively minded, but also play some good defense as well. And I think if he, fits into the structure that, the Hurricanes run with Tim Gleason as their defensive coach, and of course, it helps too when you got Jacob Slavin on that group as well, kind of teaching, leading you the way in terms of how the Hurricanes run their defensive system. I think just adding those two alone puts the Hurricanes in a very good spot of where they can just, make that run and hopefully, get a division title, get another deep playoff run, because this would be like their 8th consecutive time going to the playoffs if all things go well, and hopefully, make another run to the conference final.
Sounds good. And Dan, who you got for us? The biggest pickup, the biggest addition for the Washington Capitals this offseason?
Oh, wait. Let me think about that. Justin Sordoff and Declan Chisholm. Okay, everyone hold back. Wow, this team is just rocketing to the moon. The Capitals were all in on the Nikolaj Ehlers sweepstakes, and guess what? Swing and a miss. So the Capitals are doing something that they haven't done in quite some time. They're leaning into the youth, which I spoke about earlier. And to be clear here, I'm happy about it. The Capitals have had reluctance about going in a young direction. They always wanted to go with the sure thing. And that was, with Peter Laviolette here before he wanted the sure thing. Well, Spencer Carberry came here and ushered in a new wave of bringing along the youth. He has that rapport. He coached some of them in Hershey and has the history there. So it's going to be Justin Sordoff, who is going to be playing on the 4th line, ostensibly for the Capitals, and Declan Chisholm, who is going to be the extra. Wow, we're talking about extras. But that is what I expect. I expect the youth to take a step forward in the form of Leonard, Crystal, Miroshnichenko, those kind of guys. And I guess if I'm going to talk about additions, they're not really additions, but extensions. I'm going to talk about the extension of Nick Dowd, Jacob Chikrin, Martin Faravari, and Logan Thompson. Big pieces. Part of the secret sauce of the Capitals last season. We're hoping that they can do a similar thing, if not better, next season.
Sounds good. And as for the Rangers, I'm going to go ahead and go with, I would say for sure, Vladislav Gavrikov. There's obviously a couple of other, complementary pieces that they brought in. Taylor Radish, Dan, we talked about him a little bit in the offseason. And Zach, obviously, we talked about the big Keandre Miller trade that also entailed the Rangers getting Scott Morrow, who looked very good in the rookie series against the Flyers, and I think had a solid preseason opener against the Devils. But for me, it's Vladislav Gavrikov. This is not necessarily the flashiest or most exciting free agent class that we've ever seen. And when you think of somebody like Gavrikov, it doesn't really catch your attention all that much if you're just a fan of hockey, not necessarily a Ranger fan, and you're not watching what the Rangers are doing that closely. But Gavrikov is everything that the Rangers need right now. The Raider defensemen were an absolute train wreck last season, just very inconsistent, really struggled to defend the rush, struggled to defend the front of the net, struggled pretty much any way you can. And you bring in somebody like Gavrikov, and he excels at all those things. He defends the blue line very well. He'll clear guys away from the front of the net. again, not the flashiest player. He's got a little bit of offense to his game, but somebody that's going to come in, most likely play with Adam Fox on the top pairing. And the Rangers are in a situation where 3 of their top 4 defensemen at the start of last season are gone. Trouba's gone, Lindgren is gone, and K'Andre Miller is gone. So they had to basically revamp the blue line, and I feel like Gavrikov was always their big target in free agency. They went after him full force. They got him. He's a Ranger, and he's going to play a very, very important role for this team this season. I think a breath of fresh air because he is so consistent and is so steady back there. But another question for everybody as we move along here. Breakout candidates. One of my personal favorite questions when we do, these roundtables like this. And again, we'll start with Alex. Who's somebody maybe a little bit under the radar for the Devils that you think has a chance to, really get to the next level, really break out this upcoming season?
Yeah, it's tough because I don't think the Devils have like a ton of drama when it comes to the ability for young players to have a shot at breaking out. If you want to go, I think by the chalk, it's going to be either Simone Nemec or Seamus Casey. And right now, it looks like there's going to be room for both of them on the Devils blue line with the injury news to Jonathan Kovacevic to start the season. So there's going to be room for both of them. Seamus Casey put up some actually pretty decent numbers in limited action, particularly when you look at some of the more advanced metrics that you get from like Natural Stat Trick. Simone Nemec, on the other hand, the numbers weren't great last year, but this is still a couple of things worth remembering about the player. Former second overall pick. Obviously, at a certain point, that stops meaning something. But when we're talking about defensemen, we know that they take a little bit longer to progress compared to forwards. Simone Nemec has not always had a clear path to the NHL, and it looks like with the injury to Kovacevic, he should have a pretty clear opportunity to at least playing some third pair minutes. And that's potentially very big for the Devils. I mean, we know this, one of the easiest ways to kind of rack up points. If you've got the goaltending and you've got the blue line working, those are pretty big indicators of where you could potentially go, both in the short term and the long term. So I'm going to go with Nemec, even though the numbers were not great during the regular season. I think he was outscored basically 2-1 when he was on the ice. In the playoffs, a little bit better. In fact, did not allow a goal in 68 minutes of ice time. So I'm going with Nemec, and he came up big in some of the biggest moments last year in that series against Carolina, even as the Devils were struggling, deeply overmatched.
Sounds good. And Zach, what do you got for us in terms of a breakout candidate with the Canes? Who's the guy that's going to reach that next level for you guys this upcoming season?
Yeah, I think a lot of people would probably look to like a guy like Alexander Nikishin, coming in from the KHL. And while I do agree that he would be someone to look at, I still think for the fact that this is his first year, I kind of want to see what he does in his first full season in North America before I say he's a breakout guy. I think he'll do well, but I think if there's someone to look at to take that next step for the Carolina Hurricanes, it's actually Jackson Blake. 17 goals, 34 points last year, top 10 in both goals and in points for all rookies last year. I think a guy that was, not really talked about enough. I don't think he would ever have made a finalist for the Calder, but I think he was an under-the-radar guy in terms of a rookie season overall. Hobie Baker finals with North Dakota. And, I actually got to sit one-on-one with him on Monday after the morning skate. And for him, it's, last year was about trying to make the team because he didn't know if he was going to make it. Now, this upcoming season, he just signs his contract extension. He's with the Canes for the next 9 seasons, including this last year of his ELC. And for him, it's just trying to get better every day. And I think he has that mindset now of like, I don't got to worry about trying to make the team. Now it's just trying to get better. And I think he's a guy that's potentially poised to have a 50-plus point season for the Carolina Hurricanes. And as of right now, he looks to fit in the top 6, along with possibly Logan Stankoven as the second-line center and Andrei Svechnikov. And if they don't, put Stankov in there, and if Blake stays in the top 6 with Svech on the other side, I think the Hurricanes are in a good spot. And I think for Jackson Blake, this could be a potential 50-plus point season for him, which would be great after, going through, his first pro season after playing in college. And I think he knows what to expect and knows what to do next. And now he has that sense of, I don't really got to worry about, making the team. I have my spot. Now it's just taking it to the next level. And I think Jackson Blake is someone to keep an eye on for the Hurricanes this season.
All right. And Dan, who you got for the Caps? Who's your breakout candidate for Washington this season?
I'm going to go ahead and say I think it's going to be Connor McMichael. Now, this guy's been in the league for a while, but he took a huge step forward for the Capitals this last season. 26 goals, 31 assists. The season before, 18 goals and 15 assists, and then much less in the seasons before that. And why it could be a huge season for him is that he is going to get the first kick at the can, if you will, at that third line center position. The third line generally was the biggest weakness for the Capitals, but more specifically, the third line center position. We know that the Capitals had Lars Eller last season as a bit of a Band-Aid, which didn't work out. And the Capitals want to go into this season looking at the third line, I think, as a strength, not as a weakness. That if you take a look at the Caps' first, second, and fourth line, it's pretty much all killer and no filler. They want to get rid of that on the third line, where they have a truly dynamic third line that can pull its own weight, just like the other line. So look for Connor McMichael to get the first look at that third line center position. But if not, he can continue to knock it out of the park at the second line left wing position.
Sounds good. And for the Rangers, I'll give a quick honorable mention to Brett Berard, a former fifth-round pick and somebody who I think is going to fit in very nicely in Mike Sullivan's system. He may not necessarily make the Rangers out of training camp. He might start in the AHL, but I think if and when he's on the Ranger roster, he's going to be a solid player. Plays a physical, straight-line style of game that the Rangers are trying to get to. But my pick is going to be Will Cooley. And in a way, you could make the argument that he somewhat already broke out this past season with 20 goals and 25 assists while playing almost exclusively in a bottom six role. But now coming into this season, Mike Sullivan has been raving about him. It's a very, very good chance that to start this year, he will be in a top six role. I think he's certainly going to see an uptick in ice time in general, certainly power play time as well. And he's somebody that's an absolute wrecking ball out there. 301 hits this past season. He goes out there and hits everything that moves. Somebody that when the Rangers drafted him in the second round a few years ago, to me was something of a floor pick. You know, this is somebody that's going to come in and be a solid middle sixer for you. I'm beginning to think that the sky might be the limit for Will Cooley. I think if the Rangers eventually lock him up long-term, he's somebody that will eventually wear a letter for this team as well. He's everything that you want in a young player. And I just feel like his role is certainly going to expand this upcoming season and that he very well could be a favorite of Mike Sullivan. So I got to go with Will Cooley for this upcoming season. But in just a minute, we're going to keep everything rolling. We're going to talk about what's at stake for all these teams this upcoming season, you know, whose job could be on the line, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get to all that good stuff in just a second. All right, so we're sort of now going to look at, I'm going to say, worst case scenarios for these teams. You know, what's at stake this season? Which player has a lot riding on this upcoming season? What essentially will happen if things go south, if things were to fall apart for any of these teams? And we'll start once again with Alex for the Devils. I mean, who's kind of like, is anybody's job on the line, or is any player kind of skating on thin ice, so to speak, for this upcoming season? What do you got for us there?
You know, it's a good question. It's a tough question with the Devils because I part of the challenge is let's take a player like Dougie Hamilton, for example, who's making $9 million against the cap. Like, I think Dougie Hamilton's a really good player and he's been really good. I think when you look at the likely scenario that there's going to be a Luke Hughes contract at some point before the season starts, we talked about Nemec and Casey already. There's a squeeze coming on the Devils blue line, and they've locked up some of those kind of mid-tier and depth pieces as well to longer-term contracts. So I do think with Dougie Hamilton's full no movement clause dropping now to a 10-team no trade starting this season, so actually went into effect in July, I do think that there's a little bit of pressure on him to prove that he is worth that full $9 million. The other guy, I think you have to talk a little bit about Tom Fitzgerald, and I think there have been a couple of moments for the general manager of the Devils that have not played super well for him. I was surprised that the Devils didn't go harder at the trade line last year to try and find an adequate replacement for Jack Hughes. This is not a team that really needs to cling to assets anymore, and I think draft picks really do a lot of good for a team like the Devils. The other element of that, a couple of years ago, he really didn't do much to address the goaltender position as the season was kind of falling apart around them in the final year of Lindy Ruff. So I do think there have been some black marks that have risen against Fitzgerald, and if they go another year where it's one and done in the playoffs, that will also tie into his head coaching decision of hiring Sheldon Keefe, a guy who has very limited success in terms of actually winning playoff series. So I don't think that the seat is hot but I would say maybe someone just turned the burner on a little bit on a low level. So we could see some stuff as the season develops, and particularly if the Devils can't get out of the first round, I would have some concerns about Fitzgerald, and maybe not Keefe, but Fitzgerald, I think you could ask some questions about.
Sounds good. And Zach, if things were to go south for the Canes and they were to fall short of expectations, what happens then? What's kind of on the line this season for the Carolina Hurricanes?
Yeah, I think for the Carolina Hurricanes, I don't really see anyone really on the hot seat for the team. I mean, you have Eric Tulsky going to his second season as the Hurricanes GM, and from what you've seen, he's found some ways to make contracts work, with some deferral payments to Slavin and Jarvis and even Jackson Blake, and signed Logan Stankoven to a very great deal even for Blake as well. And I don't think the Hurricanes would ever move on from a guy who as so far has made some swings and try to make this team better, every month, and that he's been in the role so far. And like I said, it's his second year as a GM. I don't think the Hurricanes will move on that fast if somehow everything just kind of went sideways on him. And the same thing for Rod Brind'Amour. Like, Rod Brind'Amour's taken this team to 7 consecutive playoff appearances, their longest stretch of doing so, because before he took over, they made the playoffs 5 times before he took over in 2018, or in the year expanding back to 1997. So that really says something. So even if it goes sideways, no one's really losing their job. It's just one of those weird things that, it's unforeseen circumstances that, maybe just didn't work out for the Hurricanes if they fell apart.
Sounds good. And Dan, who you got for us? Like, if things were to go south and it just isn't the Capitals season, what are the consequences there for the franchise at that point?
Well, listen, I think that Chris Patrick's job is secure. I think Spencer Carberry's is as well. I don't think that they would fire either one of them if the Capitals season didn't go according to plan. I do think, however, if things do go off the rails, what I spoke about earlier in the show is the Capitals leaning into the youth. That's all fine and good. But what if that doesn't work? That's great that you killed it in the juniors. That's great that you killed it at Boston College. It doesn't always translate to the National Hockey League. So if it hits the fan, I think it's not going to be a GM or a coach that's let go. I think that the GM is going to be calling other teams in earnest, trying to bring in a veteran to help lift this team and salvage the season. I hate to say salvage the season, but when you put a lot of faith into a young group of players, and there's not a lot of them, but we're asking them to fill some holes. If they don't live up to expectation, then you got to fill those gaps. So kind of a tight rope for the Capitals to walk this season. It's great that you're leaning into the youth, but if it doesn't work, well, that can go sideways in a hurry.
Sounds good. And for the Rangers, I'm going to say Artemi Panarin. Even right now, before the season actually begins, I think a lot of eyes are on Panarin. There's a lot of intrigue surrounding Artemi Panarin. And the reason for that is very simple. He is now, somehow, some way, in the final year of the 7-year contract that he signed in free agency 6 years ago. So it could really go one of about a million different ways. I think that how the Rangers play this season is obviously going to influence it at least a little bit. Panarin does have the full no-move clause, but a question that's been raised, if the Rangers are struggling again this season and everything's falling apart and we get to the trade deadline, at that point, would Panarin be willing to waive the no-move clause? And at that point, I think if you're the Rangers, you would have to make that move because, without knowing exactly who's going to be available at the deadline, he's certainly going to be one of the bigger fish in the pond, so to speak. And look, I mean, Ranger fans are divided. Right now, you've got certain fans that they're flabbergasted. They can't understand why Panarin has not already been extended. And then there's Ranger fans that want to move on and they want to go in a different direction. And they actually would trade Panarin if the situation presented itself. I'm in a little bit more of kind of like a wait and see mode right now because I do think the Rangers are going to try to go big game hunting for some of those big free agents that could be available next year in the offseason. So I almost kind of see Panarin as like a little bit of the backup plan. If you can't get a McDavid or a Kaprizov or an Eichel or a Kempe, then maybe Panarin, keeping him around, maybe that makes some sense for you at that point. But it's a really fascinating storyline to watch because I think it certainly could go one of about a million different ways for Artemi Panarin as far as, the future, what the future holds for Panarin with the New York Rangers. But I figure we can pretty much call it there, guys. This is a pleasure as always. Always good talking hockey with all of you. And Alex, obviously, welcome to the team here. It's great to see you representing the Devils here on Locked On New Jersey Devils. And it's going to be a lot of fun. The Metro is always a dogfight, and I don't think anything is going to be any different for this upcoming season. So anybody want to add anything before we call it here?
I'm good.
Yep.
All right. So Ranger fans, Devils fans, Canes fans, Caps fans, thank you guys as always for tuning in, and we will see you next time.